Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I would argue a real Republican, meaning that I hold real Republican values from about a decade ago, and I think MAGA is cringe. That being said, I have some fire political content for you today. Straighterade is a communist. Don't be confused by her aesthetic. Pisco is a liberal, maybe a progressive sometimes, and they do a podcast together. We've actually been criticizing, we, meaning Steven and I, that liberals and progressives are currently too comfortable calling communists and leftists and socialists their allies within the political space. Well, Pisco used to fight us on this, and then he fought his communist co-host once the air was clear. So we're going to break that down today. We're going to let these people fight, and we're going to pause intermittently in order to break it down for our amusement. Let's go.
Is that it's not compelling to phrase it that way at all. It sounds like she can't really, like, even though she's the candidate, like, she can't do anything.
Well, she was in a rough spot, and Prime didn't help her out.
Yeah, see the strategy. How's that strategy going for Democrats?
They're talking about Kamala Harris, by the way.
Like, bully every individual person into voting.
No, I'm not saying it's the best strategy. I'm just saying.
No, it's just the one that you deployed in this particular conversation where you had somebody who didn't want to vote for her. No, and it's you abandoned her and like
stop. So Prime was never going to be convinced. He's not going to be convinced. I'm not going to convince Prime.
You're never going to convince the person that you're talking to. It's always for the audience. You know that. Do you acknowledge that? Do you acknowledge that? Okay, thank you.
No, so I am emphasizing. I'm emphasizing the fact that she had a difficult job, and she had to do certain things to be aligned with the administration. Otherwise,
thank Brandon. We just need a 30-year seniors cruise that comes back and picks up more olds every few years. Best.
Risk being seen as like some kind of rebel of the administration. And
yeah, God forbid she separate herself from this really, really unpopular administration. Are
you acknowledging it was a tough spot?
Yes, but I actually have citations for the claim that you made, which is that she signaled.
Sorry. On the mere notion that she was in a difficult position, you agree with that notion. So why are you fighting me on it?
I shouldn't have said but. I said yes and. I should have said yes and. But yeah, I agree.
Yes. So she was in a very difficult spot, and people should have given her the benefit of the doubt.
No, see, here's the thing. What she did.
Okay. We're going to break this down a little bit just for the sake of flow. Okay, so right now they're arguing about the Kamala presidency because leftists are more pissed that she didn't cater harder to them on Israel, Gaza, on, lefty economic concerns, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, they use that as an excuse to stay home. I think there were like 5 million people who voted Democrat who did not show up in the 2024 election. They just were not enthused about a Biden presidency. They were not enthused about a Kamala succession. And so that's kind of why Trump won. And so what's going on right now is a struggle for power. The lefties are saying, in order to win, in order to get us to show up and vote, you have to cater us to us more. And the liberals are saying, look at the fucking disaster that you ushered in. Israel and Gaza is worse. The economics are worse. The mass deportations are worse. Hundreds of thousands or millions of people are dead. And it's because you threw an electoral fucking tantrum. Grow up, choose the lesser of two evils. We're not going to cater to you on stupid policy. We're not going to cater to you on things that are geopolitically not going to happen. And so as a result, suck it the fuck up. And so the lefties in turn, in my opinion, are saying, well, then we're not going to vote for you and you can go fuck yourself, which, by the way, is kind of like a crazy way to throw a childish tantrum when you look how fucked up our country is right now. Sorry, my dog is scratching her ear, but she's kicking her foot into a cardboard box. So if you heard that, my apologies. Continuing.
From there, I can absolutely hold her accountable for. She's the fucking vice president of the United States, and she's the Democratic candidate in the challenge to Trump.
Separate issue. The issue about what she should have done is separate.
I know. Did I say it was part of the same issue? That's what I'm saying. That like it's one thing. No, it is responsive because I'm saying yes, she's in a difficult spot, but separate point, introducing separate point, pay attention to the separate point that I'm fucking making, which is I'm saying it's totally valid to criticize her for her electoral strategy, even considering all of the other things that were stacked against her.
Uncle Fatty says, big up, much respect for the showing on the Raging Tomato program. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do think that I spurred out a little bit. But you know, Rob Noor does that to me. And then in reference to Misfit Patriot, I understand people were like, "Oh, well, you're interrupting him. You're interrupting him." Okay, well, stop saying stupid shit. Is this a panel? And that's something that like I'll try to dial in the vibes because I'm gonna have another Raging Tomato debate soon. But I think they're used to like holding the baton. Like one of them holds a talking stick for 5 minutes and then they pass you the talking stick, even if they said a bunch of really stupid shit. And that's not how any Twitch and YouTube's politics panel has ever worked, ever. Okay. In reference to, excuse me, in reference to the Dylan Burns show, the format is like, yeah, Dylan Burns will interrupt in order to facilitate progress within the conversation, but largely it's left up to the combatants how they want to interact. So if they actually want to get to the point of another person's point, they can sit there and listen. However, if the person is going from point to point to point to point to point to point to point, and they're just yapping for like 5 fucking minutes, then yeah, you can interrupt them in the first 20 seconds, especially if they're repeating themselves. And so that was something that we're gonna have to dial in over time, because once again, I think that like Raging Tomato is used to like, you hold the talking stick, talk for the next 5 minutes, even if you repeat yourself and even if it's a gish gallop, which is annoying as shit.
Yes, but when I'm talking to Prime about what he should have done, I can't like, yeah, Kamala should have made different choices. Prime should have made a different choice. And
Right.
what I'm saying when I'm talking to Prime, wow, thank you so much for the Raiders from the Majority Report. Welcome, the Majority Report. We really appreciate the Majority Report. Big fans of the show. And right now we're doing a little bit of a decompress.
Pisco is going to do good, by the way. Like, I know Pisco's like kind of smaller. His videos, you know, kind of wax and wane algorithmically, but there's no way that you can do this many good debates on big shows like Tim Pool. There's no way that the Majority Report, which underperforms considering its subscriber base, but overall has a large audience, there's no way that you can get this kind of cross-pollination and not grow. Pisco, if he keeps going, he will be a successful creator.
After my debates with Tim Pool. And yeah, we're just talking about that in a different conversation I had with someone about the election in 2024. So thank you so much for the raid. Shout out Majority Report. Very much appreciate y'all and what you're doing. So yeah, listen, I can understand and even appreciate that Kamala should have made different choices. I agree with that. And I even agree fundamentally that Biden should have made huge different choices vis-a-vis Israel and Gaza, especially after.
And maybe dropping out earlier.
After, you know, Netanyahu was showing his hand that he wasn't taking these ceasefires seriously.
Yeah, maybe
100%.
not do the genocide.
Yeah, but I just view that as a separate question from what you're.
Yep, Zenith nails it. Kamala had a duty to be a better candidate. The voters had a duty to suck it up and protect democracy. Both of these things are true. Zenith, you get it.
Responsibility is as an individual in like the voting situation.
Okay, but you know that I voted for Kamala Harris. I voted against Trump.
I know.
And you know that I agree with you that, yeah, she's on the easiest position, because if she breaks from the party too much, it's like what you said. But if she doesn't do it enough, which she didn't do it enough, you're not going to be able to inspire and reach voters that are dissatisfied with the current status quo. And unfortunately, voters look up, they see what party's in charge, and they blame them. They're not going to factor in like, you know, other. Okay, so we agree on both of those points. I just feel like there is, especially in this conversation of Prime, I think that.
Yes. Okay. Cise Puede also nails it. Real people make lesser of two evils decisions every day. Go to work versus have no money and be homeless is one. Laugh my ass off. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I get really frustrated with in reference to like the libertarians, in reference to people like Fabian Liberty, or in reference to Lactoid or whatever. Although I think Lactoid did vote. But the people who chose not to vote because they were like some libertarian or conservatarian, they're like, oh, well, I didn't want to sully my personal reputation by choosing the lesser of two evils. And it's like, bro, that's like the most luxurious political position you could possibly have, is I don't want to sully myself with my vote. Stop being a pussy, evaluate the lesser of two evils, figure out which one is which, and pull the fucking lever. Okay? Pull the lever in the trolley problem, you pussy. And then stand by your decision on which way you pulled the lever, and then tell us what you think. Otherwise, you're not engaged in politics. You're engaged in having an opinion.
That is the show of good faith on your part. Should be, explaining what your issues with the campaign were instead of making excuses, because that's how it comes off.
Listen, I'm happy to say that there were mistakes made.
What were some? Name just like 2.
Okay, I'll name some mistakes.
Awesome.
I do think that even though I enjoy the unity, because I'm very anti-Jan 6 pilled, and so
I'll be right back. I need to use the restroom.
Appreciate that we're acknowledging the bravery of some Republicans to stand up against that. I think cozying up to Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney was probably, I don't think it mattered that much in retrospect, to be honest with you, but I don't know that that was the right move to make. I don't think that tying yourself so heavily to the Biden administration, even though you're the vice president, and that's what I mean, it's a difficult spot, notwithstanding the fact that it puts you in a difficult spot, you should have done more to remove yourself from that. And then ultimately, I do think that the position on certain domestic policies should have been much more clear and tangible in a way that, like, Mamdani's approaches are quotable, right? You can, even if I don't agree with all the policies of Mamdani, they're easy to remember, and what he stands for is easy to remember. Some of that I think has to do with candidate quality with Kamala, although I think that she did an honorable job in how she ran her campaign and that she stood up after Biden screwed her over, frankly, not just, by the way, in the decision to run again, but kind of sidelining her throughout the entirety of their presidency. So yeah, I think those are genuine mistakes that she made. I like the Tim Walz pick. All I'm trying to say is it's a separate issue, what she should have done and what Prime should have done as a voter. And as a voter, for him to answer, like, I wouldn't vote for Kamala even if it would save.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was in your chat saying these are stupid answers. Okay, I don't disagree with you on that. But if you only just want to keep it to that one thing about here's what you ought to do, here's what you ought to do. I just don't think, like, if that's the way that the conversation ends up going, it's not productive. It's funny, but I'm not gonna pretend like it's productive. It's not persuasive. It's not interesting. You not having, again, fucking tunnel vision that I've told you about, where you're getting triggered over bringing anything else into the conversation. It's like, no, we're just talking about your responsibility, right? But his responsibility is not a constant, it's an outcome, right? You say you think that there's no way his mind could have been changed. Maybe for this past election, doesn't seem like it, but for the next election, maybe it could be changed. And I don't think that you seized upon the opportunity to try to point that out.
I mean, I asked them, I basically said, would you vote for Newsom and JD, like, over JD Vance? And I think that he was still giving like the same kind of cagey answer, that unless he was willing to do the kind of policy prescriptions that he wanted to do, and frankly that I think should happen. I'm in favor of stopping aid to Israel. I am. People might think that, like, I'm taking this ultimately elastic stance on.
Okay, I'm explaining why that's stupid geopolitically, and people view this as like a moral endorsement, but it's not. It's a descriptive endorsement. Okay. Let's take a look. Let's go to Google Maps. A little bit of map autism for my favorite Tylenol Americans. Israel maps. Okay. So the Jews have main character syndrome. And the reason why they have main character syndrome, is because they founded the Abrahamic religions, and Islam and Christianity can be viewed as Abrahamic faiths. And Abrahamic faiths are 4 billion of the 7 billion people on the planet. Now, not everybody is like a devotee, right? Like, Europe is pretty secular. The United States is secularizing. Muslims take to Islam with different levels of fervency. So it's not that like all 4 billion people are like Abrahamic devotees. It's just that they're exposed to the Abrahamic tradition, right? Now, the funny thing about this is if you look at it geographically, Israel is at the crossroads of humanity. So God has a fucked up sense of humor. He chose his favorite people, and then he put them in the path of every European army that wanted to go to Africa, every African army that wanted to go into the Middle East, every Middle Eastern army that wanted to go into Africa, and every Asian army that wanted to go into Asia, every Asian army that wanted to go into Europe or Africa. They all had to pass near or through Israel. And so as a result, Israel got conquered like a dozen times over the past 3,000 years. And so what the Jews of Israel ultimately ended up saying is, wow, we keep getting murdered and enslaved, and that's bad. So let's go ahead and spread out. That way we don't get murdered all the time. And so they became minorities across the entire world. There's Jews in China. There's Jews in India. There's Jews in Africa. There's Jews in Europe. And this wasn't necessarily like a conscious plan. People were just looking for safety. But what ended up happening was they, worked within their societies in order to elevate their status. That way they would be less likely to be victims of racial religious pogroms. And that lasted all the way up until the early 20th century. Well, what happened in the 19th century is a bunch of European Jews said, hey, we're treated as second-class citizens. Everybody thinks we're pieces of shit. Everyone hates us. We used to have a Jewish-dominated state in the Middle East, in Judea and Israel. As a result, we're going to start a socio-political movement in order to return to that territory, and that was called Zionism. Well, what ended up happening was in the 20th century they did that. There was the Nakba. There was the reverse Nakba. People say that derisively, but that's effectively like Israel ethnically cleansing its surrounding territories. But then simultaneously, Middle Eastern and North African countries were also ethnically cleansing Jews from their territories. So a lot of the Jews that were ethnically cleansed from the Middle East and North Africa either immigrated to Israel or the United States. After World War II, where a third of the Jewish population of the planet got wiped out, half of the population of Jews worldwide ended up in the United States and half of them ended up in Israel. And so when you're like asking the question, why does the United States support Israel so aggressively? Well, it's because, relatively speaking, we believe in the post-World War II narrative that Europe wiped out a third of international Jews. That's bad. They should have a safe place to call home, which should be Israel. And then they should also be treated as equal citizens under the law in the United States and protected from anti-Semitic attack. So that's like one thing that's backing the concept of Zionism. The other thing that's backing the concept of Zionism is that Jews are pretty intelligent on average. On average, they're pretty smart people. And so IBM has a plant in here. There's other military industrial complex manufacturers who have plants here. There's other high technology innovation that happens in Israel. And so what we don't want from Israel is we don't want to sever international aid and military ties and all that kind of stuff, and then have the Israelis say, well, the United States is no longer supporting us, so fuck them. So in order to make up for the lack of financial and military support, we're just going to start selling everything that we've ever learned from the United States and our own high technology to Russia and China, the United States rivals. So you can say on a moral basis, we should sever all trade, all military ties, all intelligence sharing with the state of Israel. I'm just telling you, it's not going to happen. That's not a moral claim. That's a descriptive claim. Back to it.
On Israel, and I'm kind of just shying away from the question. I'm not. I don't support aid to Israel, and I agree with a lot of the critiques, the left-wing critiques of
even the critiques of AOC
fungibility.
Voting for that.
The fungibility argument makes sense, and I was even.
Well, it's good to see you anyway, Silver. Silver says all my meets happen in the morning, and then I'm forever behind on the stream for the rest of the day. It's all good. I appreciate you being here.
I'm saying as much. I just don't think that you should have just throw AOC out with the bathwater. I think she is making a understandable vote just in terms of optics, and people should give her the grace to fucking have that vote.
No.
All I'm saying is that even if Gavin Newsom took what I took to be a bad position on funding to Israel, or if Governor Shapiro were the nominee or some other nominee who's potentially more or less hawkish or more accommodating to Israel, we should still vote for them. That's what I mean. And I don't think that Prime is in the mood of being convinced on those kind of harm reduction arguments. And these are arguments, and this is another point that I brought up in the recap here, which is it doesn't make sense to be so pure-minded, and I want to know what your opinion is on this, with respect to voting, but to be ultimately like a deal maker when it comes to the substantive negotiations on the ground, right? Like everyone would acknowledge that in order to get to a peaceful resolution of the Israel-Palestine dispute, what's going on in Gaza, it will require some kind of mutual consideration.
H-Lock became a member. Thank you, King.
And some kind of deal. And that's going to necessitate not a pure stance where we're only giving the Gazans everything they want, the Palestinians everything they want. And people seem quite willing, and even the Palestinians themselves and Hamas are willing to come to deals and agreements that are, benefiting both parties to have
Numinac says, not gonna lie, wearing sunglasses indoors is kind of sus. Well, okay, I was bringing this up yesterday, and I'm gonna do it again to you guys. Okay, so a lot of people say that I need to look into the camera more. That way, I can build like a more parasocial, bond with you guys. Oftentimes, I'm looking over here because this is where my chat is. I need to get when I get paid, because YouTube is on a month delay. I don't know if you guys know that. So we did make a good amount of money this month, and I will have excess income next month, which is great. I'm not just going to be paying bills. I'm actually going to have some cash. So when I have some cash, I'm going to buy a monitor here and a monitor here. I'm going to have my old chat over here, the one that I'm scrolling through chronologically that you guys get pissed off that I'm always late for chat. And then right here, I'll have live chat. So if there's something going on where like Pisco's in chat and he wants to piss, then I can like check over here and be like, oh, okay, Pisco, let's call. Whereas I'll have the old chat so I can chronologically scroll through, and then I can talk to you guys about whatever the fuck you were talking about 30 minutes ago. Now, when it comes to the sunglasses, though, I understand that she probably stopped doing it. Maybe she had eye surgery. Maybe she had a little bit of pink eye. I don't know why she was wearing sunglasses. But the problem is that, like, look at this right now. Like, look into your camera, okay? Imagine that I was cross-eyed. That would be uncomfortable. Imagine that this is how I talk to you at all times, where I was just constantly staring into your soul without blinking. That's uncomfortable. So as a result, what the sunglasses do is it makes it so people can't make fun of your cross eye, people can't make fun of your pink eye, and people can't complain about you staring into their soul. Okay? So while the sunglasses can be douchey, they can also be a tool with which to properly feel like you're paying attention to your chat. Meanwhile, nobody can actually see where your eyeballs are. They can't see you playing Candy Crush in the corner. All right? We Gucci? We good? Code for 5 says she's just hungover. True. Dr. Zaya says there are not all those socialist arslers who didn't vote because Liz Cheney endorsed Kamala and Kamala didn't chimp out over Israel hard enough. True. Patriarch gifted 10 Valor Media ship members, and he was complaining about not having a wrench. So I think by law, I have to give him a wrench. Well, you already earned it, Patriarch, just by being a normal member. And thank you for the gifted memberships. I will come over to Valor Media Network momentarily to gift you your wrench. Let's go.
Have some sense that you would take one stance on voting, that there's this exceptional thing with like the vote must be pure, but your sausage making of the deal, there you can have a kind of more give and take relationship that you couldn't have with respect to voting for a leader. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I understand what he's saying. I think what she's going to do, though, is she's going to go back to tactics, where she's going to say, yes, I understand descriptively exactly where you're at, but from a tactical perspective, shaming leftists has not worked. So you need a different tact if you're going to get leftists. That's what she's going to say. And if she says that again and they loop again, I'm going to fast forward 10 minutes.
Of course, it's never going to be, it's politics. There's political realities to contend with, and, a good compromise is going to be one where everybody is upset, and that's certainly going to be the case when it comes to the resolution, which is all going to be on Israel's terms. Let's not kid ourselves otherwise. Whether Kamala had won or Trump had won, that's always going to be the case. Like, Palestinians
I didn't put it in the topics that we're going to discuss today, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the strike in Doha, because it just really does.
All right, Patriarch, you should have your wrench.
Seem that the Israelis, in coordination with the Americans, are setting up these negotiations to be completely impossible, and to put up deals and then use the
no
deals
way. Is Israel sabotaging? No way.
No, I'm not saying this like it's a big confusion for you, but like at this point, it seems like even the capacity for making a potential deal that is.
Groovy Harp says, my mom didn't take Tylenol when she was pregnant with me. She just smoked cigarettes and drank alcohol like a normal person. Based. H-Lock says, Connor, where can I find the Rob Noor conversation on Raging Tomato? You can go to, let me go over here. Counterpoints Politics. What I try to do, by the way, is I try to slice these up into VODs to be watched later. but a lot of you guys watch it before it ever happens. And so since this one was getting good metrics and we had a shitload of support that day as well, I just left it up right here. So just go to Counterpoints Politics, go to the live segment. It's the most recent one, is politics violence ever justified? The first half of the 5 hours, need I remind you, that I was live at night, I was exhausted, is me bullying Misfit Patriot and also working on my Halo Magnum. Then the second half, somewhere in here, American Nacho joins, and I made fun of his mustache, which was really like mean, by the way. I do think that he's like king of the village people with this mustache, but I'll admit that the mustache is good. It's a good mustache, right? And then here's Rob coming into Moral Frog about me working with Democrats for the 50th fucking time. And then I do a bunch of terms of service violations where I called Donald Trump a pedophile. And Raging Tomato gets mad because I keep, instead of saying PDF space file, instead of saying, I don't know, grapist, I say pedophile and I say rapist. Because here's the thing, by the way, you're not going to get demonetized as a channel for saying the word pedophile or saying rapist because you're being descriptive. What's going to happen is, oh, by the way, this is me doing so much, like getting so heated and doing such like crazy saying the word pedophile and rapist that she actually like timed out the conversation like 3 or 4 times. But anyways, the point is that like you're not going to lose your channel for using those words. What's going to happen is the VOD is going to have a yellow $ instead of a green $. So you're going to lose out on ad revenue from the VOD. But I probably had like 10 to 20 super chats during that stream, and Raging Tomato probably had like 100. So it's kind of like, you know, unless she's the smallest streamer there, if she had 50 to 100 super chats, I don't know why she's worried about a yellow $ next to a VOD. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe YouTube has said you can never say the word pedophile ever, but I've never heard that. If I'm being descriptive, if I'm talking about a criminal case, am I not allowed to use like accurate language? Anyways, H-Lock. So to answer your question, Counterpoints Politics, live, and then the most recent video.
A target for the Israeli government, both in terms of how they approach Iran and what they're doing with the strikes in Doha. So what's your reaction to that?
It's no surprise they're not interested in that. It's been like 2 years, you know, they claim around about the hostages. If they give a fuck about those hostages, they could have come home a long time ago. It's not about any of that. You know, this is a fucking
it's about ethnically cleansing Gaza. I largely agree.
Lunatic state, man.
If the Gazans broke and said, you know what, we're tired of starving, we're tired of getting bombed, we're tired of civilian casualties, we're tired of living in rubble, we're tired of not having access to clean water, we're tired of not having shelter, we're going to all move to Libya, or we're going to all move to Jordan, or we're all going to move to Egypt, and Libya, Jordan, or Egypt agreed to that, I'm pretty sure Israel would be like, yep, see you later. Have fun. Don't let the door hit you on your way out.
I heard that
and also they have no incentive because, you know, we're one of their coffers, and what
yeah, because we don't pressure them at all. This is descriptively true. I'm okay with it. I understand that I have some Zio shills in chat. I understand I have like some Zion lions in my chat or whatever. But at the same time, like, listen, it is Israel holding 2 million people in abject misery in order to recover 48 remaining hostages who are probably all dead? Or are they holding 2 million people in abject misery because they want them to voluntarily fucking leave? You know, you tell me.
What conditions do we attach to anything that they do ever?
Israel, you mean?
Yeah.
We can still cut back funding. I agree. We should still be politically pressuring Israel to change their tactics in Gaza. We should still be leveraging American military technology and say, hey, you don't have access to this shit until you start behaving better. Just because we are interested in the continuation of the state of Israel does not mean that we need to write them a blank check. I agree with this sentiment.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
So no, they have no incentive to be reined in because they know they can do whatever they do.
And yes, it's the same Straighterade from the Pixie stuff. Yes.
They act with impunity.
And it's kind of undermining.
Friends at gunpoint. Well, welcome to politics.
like Qatar has kind of tried to act here. And listen, I think that we're no friends of these oil Gulf states. At least I'm not. But
have you guys have autism? So every time I stare into the camera, you guys are like, no, don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite things to do now. One of my favorite things to do is just stare into the camera, just stare into your soul. It's awesome.
They were trying to act as a mediator here. It's undermining the potential for them to act as a mediator as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I don't see, but this is one of the reasons why.
Is there a similar delay when you get PayPal donations? Bruh, I have to check my phone for PayPal donations. Are you shitting me? You're lucky if I ever acknowledge PayPal donations. Yeah, like, bruh. Yeah, I don't see any PayPal notifications in my email, but you would have to, I would have to see your chat say, hey, Connor, I don't want YouTube to be getting a cut. Therefore, I sent you a PayPal, check your PayPal. And by the way, that's going to be 30 minutes late until I get those 2 monitors and my Bob Ross wig.
I get so frustrated with Prime's position is this is the kind of shit that Trump is encouraging and allowing for. Like, I think that he was well aware that when he made these entreaties to Hamas, because he was saying this is the last deal, take it or leave it. And he sent some kind of ambiguous set of requests to Hamas vis-a-vis their, I think even on Truth Social, he was saying something like that.
You staring at us isn't making it awkward. It's the erection. Did I say cacode? Yes, I said cacode. Yes, I did. What am I supposed to say? Your name's Cacode. I don't know if you know that. Kikode, Cacode.
That's it.
That's your name. It's not my fault you fucking wrote it weird.
But that kind of shit, I don't think would happen with the Democratic president. That we'd have this level of involvement and culpability in specifically undermining the negotiation. I do believe in the sincerity of the Democrats when they were trying to get to a ceasefire. You might not believe that they were doing the most effective thing, and I would agree with that. But I don't think that they were actively scuttling the talks like Trump is now.
Mm. Well, I mean, let's say you were having this exact same conversation, not with like, if you could just be part of a focus group, okay? No, you're not part of the focus group. You happen to pass by.
AF Racing says, I did a line of Tylenol this morning. I'm happy to report there are 514 ceiling tiles in my office. Yes.
Somebody who's just left a focus group, and they're a registered Democrat who did not vote in the last election, and they give identical arguments to that Prime just gave you. Would you really?
Sorry, I got to call it out. Straight Pans or Darth Panzer says, straight out of the gym, how we doing here? We're doing pretty good, man. I'm gonna have to lift. I'm gonna have to lift this stream. I already did. I did biceps over the weekend, but I didn't do the back exercises. I did half of shoulders last week, so I should finish my shoulder exercises. So I think I need to do shoulders and forearms today. And then I just need to do a back workout, and then I need to do chest and triceps. So you've motivated me, Darth Panzer. I'm going to start lifting momentarily. Bud123 and Darth Panzer are the most based amongst us because they tell us whenever they work out.
Really employ all the same arguments and same strategies to convince them to vote?
No, I wouldn't use the same strategies to convince a lib as I would a lefty.
You don't know that you don't even know if they're a lib. You just the information I provided to you is the only thing that you know. They're registered Democrats.
Again, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You happen to be walking by a convention center and outwalks these people that have just participated in a Democratic focus group. And these people are registered Democrats and independents. I'll add independents in there, who voted in the previous election for Joe Biden, but did not vote this time in 2024. Would you, and they make the same arguments to you that Prime made. Would you use the same lines of argumentation that you made against Prime to convince them to vote? Do you that?
I mean, I would, but I'm like meaner. I think it takes a plurality of tactics, okay? Bullying and shame, a lot of people say that they don't work as political tactics. But I would also say that being a pussy also doesn't work. So if the Democratic establishment goes, oh my God, leftists, we were so wrong. We need to give you everything you want. We need to decommodify basic human needs, and workers need to own the means of production. And you know what? Israel and Palestine, we need to nuke Israel right now, and we need to just free the Palestinians from the river to the sea. So based. I can't believe we didn't see it before. You know what's going to happen is, number one, the leftists are not going to see that as sincere because they already know that politicians deliver the world and then, they promise the world and deliver 10% of what they promise. But you're also going to lose a shitload of liberals. A shitload of liberals are going to be like, oh my God, you're catering to these leftist, socialist, communist freaks? Fuck this. I'm either going to abstain from voting or I'm going to become like a moderate Republican. Like, you have to understand, it's a seesaw. Politics is obviously not a binary, but the tightrope that Democrats are asked to walk, where they must simultaneously cater to the far left and cater to moderate right wing, it's almost an impossible task. I am not enviable of their position. If I was a moderate Democrat who was trying to cater to both, though, I would probably try to cater to the left wing domestically, and I would try to cater to the center right and center internationally. And the reason why I say that is because I think that leftists are so used to getting nothing that if you talked about like universal daycare or, you know, making sure that working people have enough food to feed their working class families, or if you talked about building more housing so we could reduce rent nationwide, I think that like leftists are so used to never being a part of the domestic economic conversation that they would probably pinch their nose for international affairs in order to get some domestic W's. Now, the only problem with that is that that shit costs money, and rich people don't like paying taxes. So that's another challenge.
They ought to have voted for.
But you could win. You could probably win electorally with a domestic, economically populist message and a moderate international strategy. I think that's probably a winning message.
Kamala Harris in 2024, and then they should vote again against whoever Republican candidate there is in 4 years.
Stress the harm being done to Gazans under the current administration and what I view would be the difference. But if you're someone like Prime who doesn't take into consideration the amount of harm and the disparity between those two, that's literally what he's saying, is that you can
sorry for pausing so much. But Zenith says, did she just ask what conditions do they attach to Israel? Biden stopped giving them 2,000-pound bombs and Trump removed the restriction. Yeah, bro. Yeah, there was not a single world in which Kamala Harris would not have been more moderate on Israel. There's not a single world in which she was the greater of two evils in reference to Israel-Palestine. It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. Sager Snow says, bro, I think you need to start have a staring into the camera segment daily. Chat is almost as antisocial as the lonely Japanese men that need AI to learn to make eye contact. My chat is filled with hikikomori and hikimorettes. That's funny.
Infinite amount of harm on one side of the ledger, and it won't change how I act.
Yeah,
those
crazy.
Can't be
Wait, did I look at guns? I don't think I look at guns.
Convinced, Aaron. And that's what, like, we've had a lot of public spats and disagreements with the live and learn, hutch type mentality. We've taken some differences of opinion.
Wait, what's the hutch type mentality?
Like, the coalition building, like eject all the left, and these people are a cancer.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Anonymous Chatter says, I work out at night, so I never get to share. I also do a 6-day split, so just assume I worked out yesterday. Based. And then Gen X is saying that she needs to get back into the gym. Based.
Sure, we don't. If we lose or if we win in November, it'll prove we don't need these fucking people. And now the same people that were saying they're fucking irrelevant, they're on Twitter, they don't do anything, they don't fucking vote, man. All they do is whine about genocide. Now they're turning around scolding all of these people as though if they had voted, it would have had some difference on the outcome. And it's like,
okay, the reason why I think that, I think Steven said this, and I don't think it's true, that we don't need leftists at all for the electoral stuff. We can just win with moderates. And I would agree with that if he was willing to reach out to Never Trump people, but he basically says, fuck anybody who still identifies as a Republican, which I think is a losing strategy. So, yeah, I think Stephen saying liberals can go on their own, I think is stupid. The reason why I've criticized leftists for fucking up the most previous election is because, as an example, Michigan flopped to Trump. That's crazy. The fact that a Rust Belt state flipped for Trump is fucking crazy. And the way that it flipped for Trump was not just economic populism, with which Trump hits that bell every time that he can. It's also because of Israel-Palestine and because of the large Muslim population of Dearborn, Michigan. I think the Dearborn district went for Biden 68-32. And I think that in this most recent election, Kamala was around 40. Jill Stein got 28% of the vote, which is effectively a protest vote. And then Trump won the state because the Democratic vote was split. So, you know, no offense, Dearborn, but you kind of like I had this conversation with Ali the other day, who's a Muslim, I think from the Rust Belt. And he was like, yeah, like he didn't say this exactly, but he was effectively saying like, yeah, Gaza's talking now, bitch. And I'm like, they're talking now by getting the shit kicked out of them by IDF with a blank check written to IDF. That's not exactly like, you know, that wasn't a winning strategy. All right. At least the Democrats would have pressured for the people in Gaza to be receiving food. You know, Trump doesn't even give a fuck. Trump would actually just watch 2 million people starve to death because he supports Israel that much.
Oh, so you did need them. Which is it? Because it can only be one. Either they're terminally online dipshits that don't.
Sorry, real quick. Fashion 40 says almost 150 people and 52 likes. Damn, like the stream. It's true. Like the stream. Share it with your friends. Engage with chat. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. We already had almost 10 people donate today. I'm going to thank Gen X for renewing their membership, Anonymous Chatter for a super chat, Test Dummy Human for gifting 10 Valor Media Network memberships. What a fucking king. Hippopotaman became a member, Dank Brandon became a member, Shaved Dog Butt became a member, H-Lock became a member, and Patriarch gifted 10 Valor Media Network memberships. What a bunch of fucking kings. But like the stream, it's free. Share it with your friends. Tell them that you're hanging out with Connor in the morning and you're having a good time. Engage with chat. There's lots of really funny, interesting, cool people in chat. We have the smartest, coolest, most insightful, most vibrant chat in all of Twitch and YouTube politics. We make up for our small size with high quality. Then, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. But if you're a brokey, don't worry about it. Pay me with your eyeballs, and I will gently stare into your eyeballs to thank you for your viewership.
Matter and they're just screaming into the void, or they were consequential and you needed their votes, and now all you have for them is like scolding. Okay.
Well, no, I'm not saying that there is not an inconsistency on the terms of like relative power. I think that sometimes that they play fast and loose with like how much power they have. On the one hand, they're the reason Kamala lost, like you said. On the other hand, they have no power.
They have no power, so we should ignore them and cut them out.
Right. So I'm not
mutually
there.
exclusive.
What I'm just saying is like there is a subset of people who can't be convinced. There is a subset of people where they're criticizing Mamdani as in principle being a stooge of the Democrats, at the same time as they're criticizing the Democrats for not rallying around him, which I do, by the way. I criticize the Democrats for not rallying around Mamdani in the context of the New York City mayoral election, especially people like Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. But there are people like Prime, I think, who I'm never going to convince him because he doesn't care about consequences. And how do you convince someone by appealing to consequences for someone who doesn't care about those consequences? You know, it's kind of like if I really am in the wild meeting with someone who thinks like Prime do, I might as well just start singing, because nothing I say about the harm that their vote might cause is going to affect their calculus.
Well, there's just things that are brought up disingenuously, and it just drives me crazy. like the USAID cuts. Okay, one, we knew that Doge was going to happen or whatever, but we didn't know about the USAID cuts. Now I hear that number, the 14.
Dude, Sam says Democrats have so much work to do in the next few years, it seems almost impossible. Listen, I'm not going to lie. Part of the reason why I want to do like go with North with the Never Trump Republican mission and try to fight for like a moderate and sane right is because principally that's what I think is appropriate. Like, listen, I'm not like Pisco. If I see Bonnie Blue banging 1,000 dudes, I want to call that woman a whore, and I want the state to institutionalize her. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so you guys, all you liberals in my chat who are like, Bonnie Blue isn't hurting anyone. She should be able to bang 10,000 dudes in 24 hours if you want. Gross. Okay? Gross. Gross. What's up? Dang. When are you going to be back? All right. See you later. Please? Anyways, so Bonnie Blue's a whore. So the whole point is like, I don't want to have to be in a room of liberals where I'm like, Bonnie Blue's a whore and she should be institutionalized by the state. And you guys are like, why don't you just let adults have fun? If you do heroin and bang 1,000 dudes, what business is it of yours? Like, I don't want to have that conversation 10,000 times. It's so fucking annoying. I really just want to be in a room of like sane people. And I'm like, Bonnie Blue is a fucking whore and she should be institutionalized. And you guys are like, yeah, probably. Like, I would rather just do that, right? And I think that's more likely in the center right than it is to happen in the center left, because you guys like to make excuses for all sorts of shitty behavior. Anyways, the other part, though, is I'm not going to lie. I don't want to be a part of your sinking ship, you know? And the reason why is because I swear to God, the liberals in Washington, D.C. are fucking asleep at the wheel. They're asleep at the wheel. They don't give a shit about domestic economics. They're not talking about the people who work at Dollar General making $10 an hour, unable to afford their kids' meals, unable to afford groceries, sending their kids to a shitty public school. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about like the principles of neoliberalism. They're talking about the world international order and how do we free Eastern Europe from the clutches of Russia. And it's like, yeah, I care about the free world as well. I care about freeing Eastern Europe from the clutches of Russia, but you guys are ignoring the working class of America and the middle class of America so much that you're allowing the country to fall into proto-dictatorship. It's like constant political navel gazing. It's embarrassing. Like the San Francisco episode of South Park, where it's a bunch of progressives like farting into champagne glasses and then smelling their own farts. That's what it felt like in Washington, D.C., bro. So I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of the pussies who simultaneously cry about our society falling into proto-dictatorship, and yet they won't look outside their window to the working class and middle class of America and be like, oh, wow, people can barely afford to survive and they don't feel like they have dignified lives and they feel like they're constantly being fucked by the state. Maybe that's radicalizing people to vote against me. It's not exactly like a difficult conception, but I think these people are so comfortable in their think tanks. I think they're so comfortable giving $10,000 speeches. I think they're so comfortable being consultants that they don't give a fuck because they got theirs. So anybody in America can figure out how to get theirs. It's just a skill issue. So sorry for that rant, but genuinely speaking, the liberals in DC that I met, the people who actually have money and power, I think they're totally fucking asleep at the wheel. They're totally asleep at the wheel. It's borderline fucking embarrassing.
Million that are projected to be killed. Let me make my argument before you make faces. Let me make the argument, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Pisco, you smug bitch.
Okay, so by 2030, there's a study that projects that because of the USAID cuts, which were completely
She's been listening to Counterpoint streams. Let's go.
Unconstitutional, which I didn't agree with, obviously.
Yeah.
14 million more people are going to die because they're not going to get access to aid that they would have otherwise if the USAID budget had been preserved. Okay. That number is brought up all the time to be like, that's 14 million people that could have been saved if you'd voted against Trump, voted for it.
Oh, damn. She's going to argue against this? Uh-oh. We're going into dangerous waters here. How are you going to... This is a barrel roll at low altitude. How are you going to pull out of this one?
Democrat and prevented USAID and Doge from like these cuts from happening and from Doge happening, right? Let's pretend all else being equal. MAGA, the Republican Party is the exact same. Democrats are the exact same, except they also support the USAID cuts. Would you then say that, and MAGA doesn't support the USAID cuts? Okay. Would you then say, oh, we ought to vote for MAGA then?
So
because 14 million people.
Well,
so if Democrats supported the...
Hold on. Sorry, what?
And say that, and MAGA doesn't support the USAID cuts. Okay. Would you then say, oh, we ought to vote for MAGA then?
Hold on. This point might be so stupid that I have to hear it in its entirety again. Sorry.
Million more people are going to die because they're not going to get access to aid that they would have otherwise if the USAID budget had been preserved. Okay. That number is brought up all the time to be like, that's 14 million people that could have been saved if you'd voted against Trump, voted for a Democrat and prevented USAID and Doge from like these cuts from happening and from Doge happening, right? Let's pretend all else being equal. MAGA, the Republican Party is the exact same. Democrats are the exact same, except they also support the USAID cuts. Would you then say that, and MAGA doesn't support the USAID cuts? Okay. Would you then say, oh, we ought to vote for MAGA then?
Hold on. Okay. So not only is this wildly stupid, sorry, Aaron. This is pretty fucking stupid. Sorry, I'm finishing up my first set of forearm workout. I know it looks weird. Don't worry about it. You know what I'm going to do to make you guys extra uncomfortable? I'm going to start doing forearm workouts while staring into the camera. All right. So not only is this wildly stupid, because that's not the scenario. Where's my why Adam friended is wrong thing? All else being equal. So she wants to shift this variable to the Democrats. She wants to say, if the Democrats are going to kill 14 million people, should you vote Republican? Well, number one, that's not the case. Okay. So that's silly, but let's entertain the hypothetical. Okay. 14 million people are going to die from preventable disease because the Democrats get into power. Well, we still have the false elector scheme in trying to overthrow the government of the United States. So we have a direct threat to the Constitution of the United States via MAGA. We still have the ethnic cleansing of Gaza supported by the US and turning Gaza into Atlantic City. We still have the backstabbing of Ukraine. We still have mass deportations fucking with the construction industry and the agricultural industry pricing that we're about to experience price shocks on. We still have the fact that Trump in the 80s, 90s, and early thousands had a best friend who sex trafficked 14 to 17-year-old girls, and Trump himself was credibly accused of raping said girls and is now covering up the pedophile ring. We still have him detaining and deporting mass deportations, resulting in the torture of people at Sukkot and Alligator Alcatraz, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia and Andre Hernandez Romero. We still have him ignoring orders and restoring due process, threatening Greenland, Denmark, and Canada for no discernible benefit, tariffs against allies and passing on the cost to consumers, pretending that it's a W, rug pulling people via the crypto scam, and then accepting corruption via crypto, and then killing a corruption case against Eric Adams and killing a corruption case against Todd Horman, the current deportation czar. So does the 14 million dead change the calculus? Absolutely. And I would argue that the 14 million dead would, if somebody said, hey, listen, all of this shit is bad, but I cannot in good conscience vote for people who are going to cause hundreds of thousands, if not millions of preventable deaths. As a result, I'm either abstaining from voting or I'm actually voting Republican. I think that could potentially be a moral position, but here's a problem with this hypothetical. The inverse is true. So not only is Trump causing the 14 million preventable deaths due to USAID and PEPFAR cuts, but also he did all this other crazy shit that threatens the Republic of the United States. So there's no argument here. This is a bad hypothetical. This is a terrible hypothetical. I don't know why she's smiling. This is not a W. I'll get back into the content momentarily, but somebody said, if my true enemy was Israel, if do what hurt Israel the most, leftists instead did what hurt Democrats the most, their actions reveal their true enemy. I mean, Marfin says, I don't know where Connor got his stats. Dearborn in Wayne County, which Kamala received 62 and Trump received 33. How much of the vote? How much of the vote did Jill Stein get in Michigan? Excuse me. 18%. Give me a second. Trump wins Dearborn. Jill Stein wins 18% of the vote over Gaza. Blah, 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 blah. So maybe it wasn't 28. Maybe it was 18. President-elect Donald Trump won 42% of the vote in Democrat, according to the city's official results. He campaigned last week, pledging to bring peace to the Middle East, despite his longstanding support for Israel. Vice President Kamala Harris gained 36% of the vote. So, bro, calculator, let's do this. And then I think they said somewhere in here, Jill Stein got 18. Okay. Jill Stein wins 18% of the vote over Gaza. 18 plus 32 is 50%. So the city, now, of course, this isn't indicative of the entire country, right? But at the same time, it's indicative of the kind of rhetoric the impact of the rhetoric of lefties, okay? Donald Trump won with 42%. Kamala or the Democrats would have received 50 if Jill Stein didn't take 18% of the pie. Jill Stein did take 18% of the pie. As a result, Kamala Harris lost a Democratic stronghold in Michigan. So I don't know where Connor gets his stats. Dearborn is in Wayne County, which Kamala received 62% and Trump won 33%. It might just be the city. Okay. So she might have still won Wayne County. But the point is that this might not be indicative of the entire electoral map. However, this is indicative of the flagging support for the Democratic Party over Israel, Gaza, related to that conflict within a significant Muslim population within the United States of America. Here we go.
So
because 14 million people.
So if Democrats,
if Democrats decided to inject AIDS into 14 million people, would you change your vote? Yeah, I'd probably change my vote. I would probably abstain from voting if Democrats intentionally killed 14 million people. I would probably have abstained.
Supported the USAID cuts.
Right.
Republicans didn't.
And they didn't.
No, but I don't think that, I would still vote for the Democrat in that context.
I know. And everybody who brings up these stats also would. I also would. So why are we bringing it up? Like it's this thing that really, really matters. It's being.
What the fuck? This is just left-wing sociopathy. That's all that is. That's just left-wing sociopathy. What? Why is 14 million people dying important to you? We still talk about the Holocaust, which was 6 million people 100 years ago. We still talk about the Armenian genocide, which was like 11 million people a century ago. We still talk about Genghis Khan, which was 1,000 years ago. We still talk about all the people who were raped and murdered throughout history as if it's serious and it affects politics. But why do we care about 14 million people? Yo, Aaron, what the fuck was that? That was crazy pants. That was a crazy pants argument. What the fuck are you talking about? Why don't you? If anybody was killing 14 million people, why wouldn't you care? 2:30?
2:45.
Yeah. Dude, what the fuck was that? What was that? I'm going to rewind that one more time so I can take substantive psychic damage for your amusement. What? Why are we talking about 14 million dead people as if it's bad? I don't know, because it's bad? Because it's like a slow rolling horror show? Let's do that one more time.
Spats and disagreements with the live and learn, hutch type mentality.
Damn, did I rewind too far?
Outcome, and it's like, oh, so you did need them. Which is it? Because it can only be.
Okay, I rewound too far.
There's a subset of people where they're criticizing. It's kind of like
They're brought up disingenuously, and it just
back there. Nothing I say about.
There's just things that are brought up disingenuously, and it just drives me crazy. Like the USAID cuts. Okay, one, we knew that Doge was going to happen or whatever, but we didn't know about the USAID cuts. Now I hear that number, the 14 million that are projected to be.
Oh, she doesn't want to be guilt tripped over the dead. Got you. Still said in the most psychotic fucking way possible. Truly, she is a BPD queen. Let's take a look at that again.
Killed. Let me make my argument before you make faces. Let me make the argument, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, this is going to be a fucking horror show. Get ready.
Okay, so by 2030, there's a study that projects that because of the USAID cuts, which were completely unconstitutional, which I didn't agree with, obviously, 14 million more people are going to die because they're not going to get access to aid that they would have otherwise if the USAID budget had been preserved. Okay, that number is brought up all the time to be like, that's 14 million people that could have been saved if you'd voted against Trump, voted for a Democrat, and prevented USAID and Doge from like these cuts from happening and from Doge happening, right?
Okay. This is descriptively true. And while it wasn't always predictable, we knew Trump was going to do some shit like this, right? We knew that he was going to back Israel hardcore in the Israel-Palestine conflict. We knew that he was going to fuck over Ukraine. Dude, one of my biggest reasons for voting was because I have Ukrainian friends, and I knew Trump was going to fuck over Ukraine, and there were going to be thousands of people who would have been alive had a normie Democrat establishment candidate won versus thousands of people whom are now dead because Trump is in charge of the Ukrainian war. I knew that was going to happen. And I knew that there was a snowball's chance in hell of the Democrats actually getting gun control passed. So I was willing to take the risk in reference to gun control, a topic that is near and dear to my heart, in order to try to do the lesser of two evils when it came to electoral politics. So if I was worried about thousands or tens of thousands of dead, but now we have 14 million projected dead, how the fuck is that not something that we could use as a cudgel with which to beat the fucking politically apathetic?
Let's pretend, all else being equal,
hypothetical.
the Republican Party is the exact same, Democrats are the exact same, except they also support the USAID cuts. Would you then say that, and MAGA doesn't?
Mr. Boop says, I have to say, this is the only political content I can actually listen to for extended periods of time without getting supremely annoyed, bored, or degenerate. Mr. Boop, that's what I'm trying to do, okay? I'm trying to take on the psychic damage on your behalf while objecting to it from a relatively sane position. That way you can engage with online politics, which is fun and is interesting and is cool, but you don't get so discouraged that you want to kill yourself. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take on the psychic damage on your behalf, and I'm trying to articulate beliefs that maybe you don't agree with 100%, but you're like, okay, I can see where he's coming from. That's what I'm trying to do.
Support the USAID cuts. Okay. Would you then say, oh, we ought to vote for MAGA then?
No, but that's because of all the other evil shit that the Trump administration has done. This is not a W.
So
because 14 million people.
So if Democrats supported the USAID cuts,
right,
Republicans didn't,
and they didn't.
No, but I don't think that. I would still vote for them.
Fast and Bulba says, I'm an anti-sex work, pro-Iraq war lefty. You can't put me in a box. Based
Democrat in that context.
I know, and everybody who brings up these.
Is it illegal to bang too many dudes? Well, in my world, it would be.
stats also would. I also would. So why are we bringing it up? Like it's this thing that really, really matters. It's being cynically invoked, and it's so transparent that it's cynically invoked.
Wait, it's not cynical. It's not cynical to like appeal to someone else's values, right? Like if what I take the position that like we need to save ourselves first, and so sort of like the structure of our country and preventing.
Andy B says they sure didn't have that same energy when Hugh Hefner was doing what Bonnie Blue is doing. Okay. Maybe we should have. Maybe we should have.
Us from falling into an authoritarian state, that if the Democrat, like I'll fight against the specific USAID cuts.
Yeah, see, no. You guys are proving the point. I have half a dozen people who are like, she's not hurting anyone. That's crazy. That's a crazy take. Yeah, dude, no offense, guys. I parasocially love you, and I appreciate you being here. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. Watching a woman and by the way, I didn't watch, but seeing a woman announce online that she is going to allow 1,000 phalluses into her orifices over the course of 24 hours, and you're not like, this bitch is fucking crazy. There's something wrong with this woman. She needs psychological help. She is hurting herself. The fact that that's not your first instinct just tells me that we're temperamentally different. We're just different, dude. It's okay. We don't have to agree. But let's say that we talked about institutionalization the other day. I'll pull this up. Okay. So we were talking about like, well, how do we prevent crazy people from getting access to firearms? And we were talking about institutionalization. And so I would unironically change this. So the current standard is the Baker Act criteria, which they won't go voluntarily, and they pose a significant risk of injury or death to themselves or others, and they can be released as soon as they're deemed no longer a threat to themselves or others. Okay, that's the current standard. New mental health criteria that I would advocate for would be cannot take care of themselves in a way that is conducive to health / being a productive member of society, can be committed to a public hospital asylum for prolonged periods until they are stabilized by drugs and therapy and community placement programs. You're saying this is Orwellian. You're saying this is authoritarian. I'm telling you, this is exactly how I would use this program. If there was some chick walking around banging every single dude that she bumped into, then yeah, I would institutionalize the fuck out of her. I would use the new mental health law in order to force her to get therapy, in order to force her to get medicated so she doesn't, I don't know, destroy her vagina, get random STDs, get abused or raped by random men with whom she is having promiscuous intercourse with. Yeah, I would 100% put her in a mental health facility. So we're just different. You don't think that this is like what Bonnie Blue is doing is sufficient criteria in order to commit her to an insane asylum. And I do. Okay. We're just different. It's okay for us to be different. All right. We don't agree. It is what it is.
And I'll be in court or helping or assisting or signal boosting the people who are in court fighting against the USAID cuts or whatever. But if our goal is to protect our system first and our country first before we help others, and I think that is maybe my most proximate goal, is to defend the Constitution and defend freedom in this country.
Hey, everybody, you all did what I predicted you were going to do. You're going to be like, institutionalization is worse than her being a whore. Okay. We don't agree. That's fine.
Then it's not cynical for me to trying to appeal to your values, right, which is harm reduction of overall death, to notice this difference between one party and another. I don't know how that's hypocritical.
Because you're focusing on the procedure and the process. The issue is that those cuts occurred unconstitutionally because no one.
I don't think they occurred unconstitutionally. By the way, I think the president, as the administrative of the executive state, like all funds can be dispersed, but I'm pretty sure he can say, as the executive, we don't need these funds. As a result, we're sending this back as a rescissions recommendation to Congress, and then Congress can delete the funds. So I don't even know if this is accurate.
Elon Musk. He's appointed by Trump in this role that's supposed to be really just reserved to a very, very limited capacity temporarily, and he starts doing trying to cut things that were congressionally allocated already that he doesn't have the authority to be cutting. So if that's your issue, then why are you pointing to the outcome and saying, and especially weird to say, we need to care about ourselves first, but you're talking about 14 million people globally.
Conservatism says, if Republicans can make me believe they give a fuck about the working class of America, then I'll be receptive as fuck. Wait, of a shift. Let's fix lifelong medical debt and support organized labor. Number one, the fact that you guys are paying medical debt is funny to me. You pay your medical debt? That's funny. I just let the insurance companies negotiate it, and that's what the medical people get. You know, I don't have $10,000 for, you know, somebody jamming a camera up my ass. Get $7,000 from the company and then fuck off, you know? Anyways. What the fuck was I saying? Oh, yeah, they're never going to support left-wing policies, conservative liberalism. You misunderstand what I'm saying. Donald Trump says America has been hollowed out by he doesn't even use the word neoliberal. It's been hollowed out by the globalists, the Marxists, the communists, the fascists. It's been hollowed out. They've sold your jobs to brown people. They've let endless hordes of brown and black people into the United States of America, and they're working on my speech is already better than Donald Trump's speech, by the way. And they're letting them work for cents on the dollar. That way Americans can't compete. What I promise is that we are going to kick the illegal rapist murdering browns and blacks out of the country so you can afford a house and so you can have higher pay. Now, is deporting all of Mexico and all of Haiti and all of the immigrants to the United States going to have disastrous economic impacts on agriculture and construction? Abso-fucking-lutely. But does that make white people feel better that their annoying Haitian illegal immigrant neighbor who plays music too loud and keeps chickens in his backyard is getting deported? Probably makes them feel a little bit better. Does it make them feel better that a giant Hispanic neighborhood that's a part of their like town is now quiet because, and like everybody's dead, like it's like a church mouse pissing on cotton in there. And the reason why is because none of the Hispanics want to commit any crimes because they don't want to be deported while they're still working within their communities. But previously they had an ethno-religious racial resentment because within that community, they were Catholic, and the person I'm talking about is Protestant. They didn't speak English, so it was difficult to communicate with them. And then also I don't know, they have a cousin who used to work the fields for $20 an hour, and now Juan from Tijuana is working the fields for $5 an hour under the table. Like, yeah, you made those people feel better. You fucked up the economy. You hurt a shitload of people, including totally innocent immigrants to the United States of America, but you feel better because Hispanics and Haitians were mildly annoying members of your community. So that's what I'm saying. They're not actually going to address the economics. They're not actually going to help working class Americans. They're not actually going to help middle class Americans who are backsliding into the working class, but they will hurt immigrants. And that'll make, you know, Trump people feel a little bit better.
Globally are going to die, not in the United States.
Aaron, there's no inconsistency. On the one hand, you're appealing to things that you care about and saying, well, how would I?
HTXL says, this woman banged too many dudes to my liking. She should be institutionalized. Yeah, sure. It's the same way that this woman took too much Tylenol. I think she should be hospitalized. You understand that there was like some dumbass pregnant woman who took Tylenol as a protest against the Trump administration, and she caused liver failure, and she's going to fucking die? Yeah, that woman should have been hospitalized. You're right. There's too much of a good thing. If you eat too much chocolate cake to the point that you're 600 pounds, I think you should go to the hospital and get gastric bypass surgery. Okay? Yes, too much of a good thing can be bad. 1,000 dicks in 24 hours is alarming. If you ate 1,000 White House cheeseburgers, White Castle cheeseburgers, and you were 600 pounds and you were causing like damage to your body, I would say that you should go to therapy and you should be hospitalized. You figured it the fuck out. Jesus.
I determine the vote. And on the other hand, you're saying, listen, if what you care about are lives.
Sorry, we should get back into the content. But Sapien says, why would the poor people be upset? The stock market is doing so good. AKA Batasui says, I was watching a segment that said school teachers are on average making 27% less wages than others with equal or less education. Yep, because it's a public service job.
You should also agree with me because in addition to the things that I care about, what you most care about, and I'm saying I don't care about like the loss of life overseas. I'm just saying in terms of what you value more or less, and you're giving a hypothetical of a version of Trump that really does care about not cutting aid to foreign countries, and I'm happy to accept that hypothetical.
Not Trump, like the Republican Party.
Not like the current Republican Party.
Yeah.
Like in that situation, in this hypothetical, yeah, you could have a different preference matrix, which you would still vote for the Democrat. In other words, it's overdetermined that you're going to vote for the Democrat. But in a
Pete says she makes the claim that Pisco actually doesn't care about USAID cuts because if the Dems did them, he would still vote for Dems. Yeah, but that would be because of all this other shit that I said, right? Like, you understand that some of this is like existential to the United States. Like, if Trump had succeeded in the false elector scheme and overthrowing a peaceful transfer of power, that arguably could be the death of the Republic. You understand that, right? So the death of the Republic, in my opinion, would be worse than 14 million dead people through preventable disease. That would be worse. And so as a result, I would still vote for the Democrats as the lesser of two evil. That doesn't mean that I can't complain about what the Democrats do. It's not 100%, like this whole like binary thinking of a political party. You vote for a political party, so you have to endorse every single piece of policy that they pass is fucking stupid. It makes political discourse worse. You think I like that Democrats are sweeping for Bill Clinton, doing everything that Donald Trump did? I don't. You think I like that Democrats keep trying to do stupid as fuck gun control? I don't. You think that I like Democrats are like ignorant on economic matters and as a result propose like economically disastrous policies that are counterproductive to their stated aims? I don't. I think the Democrats are fucking stupid. However, Democrats are clearly the lesser of two evils in this regard. Voting for someone does not mean you endorse every single policy position that they even contemplate. That's fucking stupid. If Nikki Haley was the presidential nominee, I probably would have voted for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley has wildly stupid positions on internet anonymity. Like, somebody called her like an anti-Indian slur on the internet, and Nikki Haley was like, that's it. No more internet anonymity. Which was the dumbest, most immature position possible. And yet, I would still vote for Nikki Haley over Donald Trump. And I would absolutely vote for Nikki Haley over like Zoran Mandami or Hassan Piker or Rashida Tlaib or AOC or name any progressive. I would probably vote for Nikki Haley over any progressive.
Appealing to someone else who doesn't care as much about the institutions, doesn't care much about the rule of law and the structure of the country, and cares just about the raw outcomes for individuals in terms of their, them living or dying, then it's not inconsistent to say, hey, if what you care about is harm reduction for people abroad.
Jet X says, do not do a forearm out. Do not do a forearm workout and stare into the camera.
Look at this harm. I don't think that's just
it's not, but it's not just the raw outcomes. There have been conflicts that have killed far more than the Gaza genocide. The reason why it's significant is because the intentionality going in this
true
genocide. It's not because of just the number of people dying alone.
No, I don't think it's just because of that, for sure. And I think that you would agree that this is something else I said in my discussion in the video that I had of like the recap, where there is this kind of, I think, genocide exceptionalism, which I'm not trying to sound crass. I think that you would acknowledge that we care about things, and I agree most pro-Palestinian people would care about things other than just genocide. You care about crimes against humanities and war crimes and genocide and poverty and starvation, whether intentional or not. And I agree that there's a special harm being done by the intentionality, the special intent of genocide. But like, given the choice between two options, right? Like, if there's a genocide of a 40,000 population person versus like, if you assume that the metrics or the estimations are correct, it's like 12 million people are dying. It's not so intuitive to me, like, which is the worst outcome there. And it's not so intuitive to me that we should like discount, not saying that we should consider them exactly the same or that they're not apples or oranges. In some respect, they're apples and oranges, but it's not like that we should are we really going to say that we know that our intuition is strong, that the genocide of the 40,000 is worse than the starvation and disease of 12, 13 million? That's not intuitive to me.
This conversation.
Why? Gilroy VFX says, because most people would agree with you and it's your right to call her a whore. She should be shamed as such, but you cross the line when you say that she should be institutionalized against her will. Why? Why? When you bang 1,000 dudes, there's no way you vetted every single one of them with STDs. There's no way that they turned in accurate blood tests for STDs. There's no way that you're not going to encounter like a rapist within that 24 hours. There's no way that you're not going to risk pregnancy and or STDs via that action. Why do you have to watch someone commit self-harm? If somebody was slashing their wrists, you would send them to a mental hospital. But because it's dicks instead of a razor blade, you're like, yeah, that's fine. An endless carousel of dicks is okay. But if she took a fucking razor blade to her wrist, then you all of a sudden are like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like let's take her to the hospital. You understand, like you guys are also conceptualizing institutionalization like incarceration. That's not the point of institutionalization. The point of institutionalization is to be like, okay, why are you trying to fuck 1,000 dudes? And then Bonnie Blue goes, well, I never really thought about it before, but I think that my father left when I was 8 years old, and I'm looking for constant male attention in order to fill the void where I thought my father's love should be. And so as a result of this psychological breakthrough, and you giving me medicine that stabilizes my bipolar disorder, I no longer wish to have 1,000 dicks in my butt, vagina, and mouth. You guys act like no, she has to. She has to do this. She has to save Gaza. Okay, all right, that's a bridge too far. But like, who is she helping? She's not helping herself. She's hurting herself. She's not helping society. She's making men worse. It's a form of self-harm. Why are you guys okay with like the second that somebody takes a razor blade and puts it on their wrist, you're like, okay, go to the hospital, talk to a therapist. But when somebody is like, I want 1,000 dicks in my orifices, you're like, go off, queen. Go off, queen based. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm not the wrong one here, okay? You guys have some like temperamental bullshit in your brains where you're like, well, I could be a whore and I wouldn't want to be institutionalized. Therefore, nobody should be institutionalized ever. And that's a fucking stupid way to think about the world. All right? I'm right, you're wrong. We don't have to agree, okay?
Happening right now on social media, and I think people do get it. People are more viscerally disgusted by this woman, that this Ukrainian refugee, a young woman who was brutally murdered on a train or something like that in North Carolina.
So we get to talk about institutionalization even more. Let's go.
Well, I get you. Yeah.
She's like stabbed in the neck, right? And people that are bringing up like statistics, those statistics might be accurate, but it's not. It's like gonna fall on deaf ears to the person that's concerned about this one thing. It's like bringing up like, oh, did you know? Like, if you really care about death, you would not be focusing on this woman killed in the subway. You'd be focusing on like the fact that 30,000 Americans die of strokes needlessly.
Aaron,
think about that. But what point do you think I'm trying to illustrate? What point do you think I'm trying to illustrate? You're saying it's.
I'm interested. What is the steel man, Aaron? I'm happy to hear it because so far I think this argumentation is poor.
It's not intuitive. Like really what the difference is when you have the intentionality behind the number of people that are dying. So 40,000, it's less people, but it was intentional versus several hundreds of thousands more dying on accident or, millions more, right? For, but it wasn't like intentionally done.
Well, I'm recognizing that there's, and I'm giving you credit because I agree with you, that there's a special harm and rights deprivation that matters differently for 100 people die of heart.
I have no idea why Fast and Bulbous said this, but bring back war elephants and extravagant regalia. I mean, I agree. I just wouldn't want to. I just wouldn't want to see a war elephant injured on the battlefield or killed on the battlefield. That would make me super sad. I want war elephants on the battlefield because I want to see them stampeding through military encampments. But I don't want to see an injured or dying war elephant. That would make me super, super sad. Lawson Harrison says, what were the 14 million wearing? True. All right, let's stop talking about sex. We're not going to agree. It's fine. I'm right. You're wrong. Take the L. I'm fucking with you, okay? Have your perspective. I don't give a shit. But I'm just telling you, I feel the way that I feel, okay? We're not going to agree. Let's move off of the sex stuff.
Problems, and one person gets brutally stabbed like that, I think people are rational to consider the rights deprivation and the intentional malicious act as part of that calculus. And so, yeah, you're going to be more animated by the obscene, horrible killing than like the statistic.
Please don't mention BPD. I have BPD PTSD. Listen, guys. Insane attractive women will ruin your life. All right. And a lot of people use BPD in order to describe bipolar disorder, which is bipolar disorder is a disorder, a chronic mental health condition characterized by extreme mood swings between mania, high energy and euphoria, and depression, low mood and lethargy. I know actually like a healthy chunk of people who have this shit, including like 2 or 3 good male friends. But that's not what I'm saying when I say BPD. What I'm referring to is borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a mental health condition characterized by severe emotional instability, difficulty controlling anger, unstable relationships, an unstable sense of self, and impulsive behaviors like self-harm and reckless actions. Symptoms include extreme mood swings, chronic feelings of emptiness, intense but short-lived anger, fear of abandonment, and periods of paranoia or disassociation under stress. Treatment for BPD primarily involves psychotherapy, with strong therapeutic relationships being essential for positive outcomes. So this is what I'm talking about with BPD. And by the way, there are tons of attractive people who have BPD. And I think it's, I'm not going to armchair analyze, but the point is that when you say, oh, Steven Destiny is hooking up with a bunch of BPD girls, this is what you're really saying. You're really saying that he's hooking up with women with severe emotional instability, difficulty controlling anger, unstable relationships, an unstable sense of self, and impulsive behaviors like self-harm and reckless actions. And by the way, those reckless actions can and often are reckless sexual impulsivity, which is why a lot of men, including Donald Trump, including me, have joked about like BPD e-girls, right? Maybe Donald Trump didn't say e-girls, but he's talked about BPD girls. So the whole point of this is that like women can be pretty, but they can ruin your fucking life. And the fact that Aaron was like, lol, 14 million, who gives a fuck? Because that's not something you seriously care about. That was one of the most callous ways that I've ever heard the deaths of 14 million people discussed. And that includes like MAGA. Like the way that MAGA, like the 14 million USAID deaths, whenever you talk to a MAGA person about it, it's water off of a duck's ass. That's the way that she talked about it. So my prediction is she has BPD.
Of 100 people die.
By the way, why the fuck am I being brought up here? Just like Connor guilt trips his son, why the fuck am I catching flack on this stream? Yeah, I guilt tripped my son because I wanted him to pay attention to the injury of his mother. Fuck you, Missy. Sorry, there's just Missy is talking shit about me in their chat.
From heart failure that weekend or something like that, and they're not 100% comparable, but at a certain level of scale, you start to you have to consider it as part of your analysis. Like if I could prevent one such killing on the bus versus 1 million people dying of cancer every year, yes, you weigh in the rights deprivation, you weigh in the malicious intentional
True, get him, Pisco
aspect of it, but ultimately everything I think is fungible in that way, where you have to make some kind of rational trade-off.
Connor's Jonah says Connor's the Hollow Knight, but for taking psychic damage. True. Sapien Green for 100 DKK says thank you for your sacrifice. I live to serve, kings and queens. I live to serve. Quick chill. I'm probably going to engage with this for like another 10 to 30 minutes, depending on whether or not the content flows. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat. Super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We got 170 people here. I parasocially love you for being here. Thank you for your eyeballs. I promise I will not do a forearm workout while staring into your eyes.
Where it can't just be like, okay, one person gets murdered, I would trade away the entire planet in an unintentional fashion for this one intentional malicious rights deprivation. You understand?
But you said, yeah, but you said 14
Yep.
15 million people could be killed because of USAID cuts. You're still voting for Dems. In my hypothetical, where I said Republicans.
Okay, Aaron, but that's not hypocritical because we still have all these other problems. Like, I don't know, Donald Trump trying to overthrow the Republic through the false elector scheme, ethnic cleansing Gaza in order to turn it into Atlantic City, backstabbing Ukraine, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths, probably thousands, but maybe scratching towards tens of thousands, mass deportations, fucking with construction in it. Dude, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it again. Just look at your fucking screen, okay? Yeah, the 14 million preventable disease deaths are fucking a horror show. And if the Democrats were doing it, I would be criticizing the fuck out of them for it. But it's not the Democrats who are doing it. It's MAGA and Trump who are doing it. And not only are MAGA and Trump doing one of the most horrific humanitarian crises within the past century of the planet, but they're also doing all this other fucked up bullshit. The fact that she thinks this is a W is fucking crazy. That's crazy pants. It's almost like she's a BPDE girl.
And Democrats, everything's the exact same. The only difference is that Democrats support the cuts to USAID and Republicans don't.
There's a certain level of scale at which, I can't with precise, specificity tell you where it is. And part of my
hold on, yeah. Ved Sunil says, love the anti-whore energy. We need to hold the men accountable as well, though. Yes, Ved Sunil. I think the other thing too is you guys are like reflexively defensive of loose women because that's how you get laid. Boom. But yeah, the men who are cheating on their wives with Bonnie Blue are fucked up. And if you knew a guy who was like, hey, I'm in a loving relationship, I love my wife and I love my kids, but I'm gonna go hook up with Bonnie Blue, you should fucking annihilate that person. Annihilate them. Be like, you're such a fucking piece of shit. Why are you ruining your marriage to go get some orifice? What is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you destroying your family for this bullshit, for this e-whore? You fucking idiot. Like, you should bully the fuck out of that person. And if they follow through on that shit, you should not be complicit in their lie. You should tell their spouse. You should tell them, hey, your fucking husband told me that he was going to go hook up with Bonnie Blue, and then he texted me about it, laughing about it. He hooked up with Bonnie Blue. He's a fucking piece of shit. You do what you got to do. If you stay together, whatever, that's fine. If you guys break up, I just wanted you to know the truth. Yeah, dude, 100%. All the people who are married or in committed relationships who participate in a Bonnie Blue orgy need to be bullied like a motherfucker. 100%. I'm with you there. Andy B says, brother, I'm with you 100% on the degen adult content stuff is self-harm. I'm talking about how liberals were out for blood for guys that did it like Hugh Hefner, but it's girl power now. Sure. It was a different time. Hugh Hefner should have caught more shit. And by the way, I think Hugh Hefner's legacy is somewhat sullied. So what people did back in the day, sorry, this bears some level of criticism, okay? So let's take a look at Hugh Hefner. Okay. So Hugh Hefner used to be viewed as a Chad. And the reason why he was viewed as a Chad is because he walked around with a captain boat. He seemed like a sweet, nice guy. He did the Playboy bunnies where he found like the hottest chicks on the planet and he made them dress up in bars and all that kind of stuff. And they would dress up at parties, and then the girls would, they wouldn't be compelled to hook up with people, but they would kind of be expected to hook up with people. And there was a chick, I forget her name, total babe, but she like loved Vietnam and she loved abortion. Kind of a piece of shit, but she was an attractive lady. A journalist who became a Playboy bunny. But in the 70s and 80s, this girl, Gloria Steinem, okay? I still think she's a piece of shit. Gloria Steinem, but she went undercover as a Playboy bunny, and she kind of exposed how fucked up this world was, because under like the glitz and the glamour and the alcohol and all that kind of bullshit was effectively just these women. They never talked about the prostitution, but they were effectively prostitutes, and they were prostituted out to rich and powerful people. Now, the good news is that they were adults, right? Hugh Hefner did what what Jeffrey Epstein did, but Jeffrey Epstein did it to 14 to 17-year-old girls, and Hugh Hefner did it to adult women. And to some degree, you had to know that what you were getting into, which was the fact that you were going to dress like a slut, you were going to go party with rich men, and ultimately some rich guy was going to proposition you, and you would have to decide about whether or not you were going to have sex with them. Like, you had to know that as a Playboy bunny going in. However, one of the things that was kind of interesting was there was an autobiography from one of the girls, Gloria Steinem, a Playboy bunny confessional book. I forget who it was, but it was one of these girls. It could have been Holly Madison. It could have been this girl. I don't remember, but I saw an interview in reference to one of these girls who wrote a book. And she was basically saying, like, Hugh Hefner's madam, whoever was in charge at the time, basically, like, she was a model. She wanted to do a Playboy shoot. She wanted to hang out, but she didn't know if she wanted to be a bunny. She didn't know if she wanted to, like, be one of Hugh Hefner's wives. But she was ushered into a room where Hugh Hefner, before he went to bed, inserted himself into 7 different women for like 10 seconds apiece, then finished his business and passed out. And like, you can look at that as like, oh, he's such a Chad because he got all these babes to give it up to him. But I almost view that as like kind of pathetic. He didn't have a relationship with any of those women. He didn't know any of those women. He barely looked at any of those women. He did it because he thought that he was being impressive by seducing half a dozen attractive women with whom he had 10 seconds of coitus and then passed out. Like, is that cool? Or is that kind of sad and pathetic that he dedicated his entire life to that? I don't know. So y'all decide if it's cool. Y'all decide if it's cringe. I don't really give a shit. But the point is that, like, for whatever the valorization of Hugh Hefner's lifestyle, it actually ended pretty sad. Like, he still got old. He still became an old man. Gold diggers were fighting over his corpse before it was even in the ground. Half of the women that he had relationships with, long-term relationships with, they didn't even like him. They were just putting up with him so they could have some degree of fame as Playboy bunnies and wives of Hugh Hefner. So ultimately, it kind of seems like a shallow, vapid, stupid, ultimately kind of ugly style of relationship. So, yeah, I don't know. You guys tell me. But yeah, I think that Hugh Hefner's legacy should be reevaluated.
My analysis here is I think that an authoritarian state is much more likely to do other kinds of abuses, and just based on the promises of one party versus another. And, you know, my intuition.
Yeah, see, and then you guys make up fucking cringe positions. Just her, though, not the Johns who were lining up to get fluffed. They're in the clear. Neat. Nope, never said that. You guys made up a position and then got mad at it. Sucks to suck.
On which party excess we're able to rein in and which not. So a lot of it goes into the analysis, like in the background here, about like my intuition of the harm. But at some level of scale, I think you would agree that we would want to, you know, forego the rights that we care about at some degree of scale.
Well, Prime clearly doesn't feel like the party is movable on this because, you know, he obviously feels, and it's not irrational, a lot of the Democratic base feels this way every single fucking day. The Democratic Party.
Sure. So Kay brings it back. Sure, I agree it's fucked up, but if she's cleared by a mental health people, then there's nothing you can do unless you want to have government for doctors to make diagnoses based on morals. It doesn't go anywhere. Sure. Between my institutionalize every whore position and your, well, if you're a whore, but you're mentally sound, you should be allowed to do whatever you want to do. That's probably the sane policy. Okay?
Feels this way, that they will go down with the fucking ship that is Israel before they change their goddamn position on it and get in line with where the majority of the fuck.
Correct. Connor, I don't like promiscuity, so I lock people up for it. You know what I would also do? You know what I would also do? Oh, man, you guys are going to love this. I'm showing off my fascist credentials, okay? My 600-pound life. These people should not be on disability and should not get food from the government unless they're in treatment for their obesity. Okay? These people should get no federal assistance, no state assistance, unless they are in active treatment for their obesity. Okay? I'm serious. I'm serious. These people should not be getting hundreds or thousands of dollars a month for soft drinks, for chips, for cookies, for snacks. This is a medical emergency. These people will die 40 years early as a result of self-harm. These people die all the fucking time, and we're subsidizing their deaths through state non-intervention. So if you want to do this by yourself, if you don't want to accept tax dollars, if you want to eat, like, if you have, if you're like a trust fund kid and you can spend millions of dollars on fucking health, on fucking snacks, and this is how you want to spend your life and this is how you want to die, go for it. But if the state is involved whatsoever, these people should not receive a cent of government spending unless they're in treatment for their obesity. Okay, there's another fascist take for you. Enjoy.
Bases. We all talk about how, like, oh, these Gaza purity testers, they just care about the genocide. They don't care about anything else. They're immovable. It's so unreasonable.
Titanium Marble says, I'd say riding motorcyclists is more dangerous. Should we be thrown in the mental asylums too? Yep, motorcycle drivers. Asylums, now.
But nobody's talking about, okay, but nobody's talking about how the Democratic Party will not move on Israel. So they're the ones, to me. It's people who support Gaza aren't in fucking power right now. Maybe, you know, they're in the base, but they don't care. They don't have any power really institutionally. We can name on like two hands. These two hands more than suffice to name the Democrats that have been the most outspoken with respect to Israel-Palestine. Okay,
I just view them as different.
There has to be a line somewhere for cultural degeneracy. Yeah, not just that. Guys, there's 1,000 streamers who will tell you that you're correct. Let's pull up. Let's do it real quick. I'm being an asshole, but you guys are being assholes too. So, you know, forgive me. Forgive me for fighting you, okay? Lib and learn. Let's go ahead and click here. Okay. YouTube. Let's go to Destiny. Okay. So this guy.
Trans athlete is going to do.
Sorry. Where is it?
Break up your vision.
Here we go. Let's do this. Sorry, I'm almost done, but I want to make a point.
Oh, this is Pete Buttigieg. She's
okay. So if you guys want to say, oh, this is crazy, you know, you think that people should be institutionalized if they're engaging in self-harm? Yeah, I do. But if you don't like that take, that's totally fine. All right. It's totally fine for you to not like that take. Hassan Piker is going to say, go off, queen, bang 1,000 dudes. Steven is going to say, hey, can I be one of the 1,000 dudes? IRI is going to say, yeah, base, go for it, queen. Pisco is going to say, who are you as a man who is a part of the patriarchy to tell a woman what to do? Josiah is going to say, I think it's kind of gross, but I don't think the state should intervene. Hutch is going to say, yeah, it's kind of gross, but I don't think the state should intervene. Soy Pill would say, you know, I'm going to do it as a joke. I'm definitely going to wrap my tool, but how do I sign up for the Bonnie Blue gangbang? Then Straighterade is going to be like, the cis hetero patriarchy has destroyed women for 10,000 years. Bonnie Blue is a war cry for women everywhere. And then Pisco, I think I already did Pisco. So the point is that you don't have to like all of my takes. I don't like all of your takes. It's totally fine. We can still be friends. We don't have to agree on everything. And by the way, there's a snowball chance in hell that I'm going to pass legislation to incarcerate Bonnie Blue for being a whore. It's a very low chance, okay? I'm just telling you how I feel. All right? Can I vent a little bit? Can I share my feelings as an American? Can I share my feelings as somebody who claims to be social conservative? Can I say that I don't like whores being whores to the point of self-harm? Will you let me do that? I thought this was America. But if you want 10,000 fucking liberal and lefty content creators to say, no, guys, it's actually morally neutral to be a whore to the point that you're self-harming. It's actually morally neutral or even positive to be fat as fuck and die 40 years early. It's actually morally neutral to do heroin as long as you don't get addicted. If you want somebody to say that shit, there's a dozen creators out there for you. And by the way, I'm not saying leave my community. I'm just saying we're not going to agree on this one. And it's okay that we don't agree. All right? I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. I'm more authoritarian than you are. I'm still pretty fucking liberal. But I think when it comes to self-harm, the state has a right and duty to step in. And I think when it comes to self-harm, it should not be subsidized by the state. It's just that fucking simple. And if you don't think banging 1,000 dudes is self-harm, I think you've kind of lost it. I think you're kind of Coomer brained. I think you're lost in the sauce. I think you've been on the internet for too long. But haven't we all? Back to the content.
And so
right? Like,
that
so, yeah,
is like Prime is weighing, and like the people that are sitting out the vote, they look at this party and they see, I don't really believe you that the Democrats could be moved
Who determines what is degenerate? Me.
on this, because even after this election, right,
the base is being moved.
Yeah, the base is being moved, but it's not being reflected in the party. And so they feel like, okay, well, it just doesn't seem to be any amount of Democratic constituents that can feel this way on this issue that you'll ever see the change reflected.
Okay, Deadly Zebra says, what if society determines Christians to be degenerates with make-believe friends? Okay, this is where you guys are fucking stupid. Okay, you guys are just fucking stupid. Heroin addict. You guys are actually like incapable. Sorry. I'm right, you're wrong. Degenerate, decline or deteriorate physically or mentally. Okay, so let's take a look at a heroin addict. Would you say that this person is thriving, or do you think they're declining physically? What do you think, chat? Do you think that this is morally neutral? Like this? Do you think this is neutral? Do you think this guy is degenerate or this guy is degenerate? Okay, which one do you think is degenerate? Meth addict. Which one do you think is degenerating physically or spiritually? The chick with scabs all in her fucking face because she's so itchy from methamphetamine that she picks holes in her fucking face, or the normal chick? The rotted teeth or the healthy teeth? Which one do you think is degenerate? Let's do alcohol. Alcoholic. Person. Alcoholic person before and after. So this is before, this is after. Which one is actually generating versus degenerating? Which one is degenerate versus healthy? You guys act like this shit is arbitrary. It's obviously not arbitrary. It's obviously not fucking arbitrary. Catching STDs is not arbitrary. Having unwanted pregnancies is not arbitrary. Having abortions all the time is not arbitrary. Being a drug addict is not arbitrary. So the fact that you guys have fallen so far down the liberal tolerance rabbit hole that you are no longer capable, like a obese versus fit person. The fact that you guys have fallen down the rabbit hole of arbitrariness, that you can no longer identify like healthy versus like unhealthy. Like look at this picture. Do you think this is arbitrary? This is a slice of someone's corpse. Okay, now they're both dead. I understand that line of argument. But look at this. Healthy brain matter, relatively healthy spine. Looks like the vital organs are okay. And then look at this shit. We got fucking like tumors. We got cancers. We got so much fat that it's fucking covering the exterior in a giant marbled mess. The fat is so bad that it's covering all of the vital organs, probably populating the bloodstream with fat. You think this is arbitrary? Are you fucking high? Listen, again, for the 50th time, you guys don't have to agree. We don't have to agree. We don't have to agree with each other. But don't tell me that it's arbitrary. Don't tell me it's neutral. It's not neutral. It's bad. Okay?
in the institutions. You'll ever see it reflected in the politicians. They will not change on this issue. So if it's a matter of like, oh, but you can push Kamala more than you can push Trump more with respect to Israel-Palestine, these people don't feel that way. I happen to agree with you.
I mean, that's kind of stupid, but whatever.
That I do think that that's true, but I'm not surprised that they feel that way, given how resistant Democrats are that are currently in office to changing on Israel.
I kind of view them again.
What about cheesecake? Cheesecake's fucking delicious.
And we're gonna loop on this. They're separate issues about like whether or not
you can't see it, but I'm rolling my eyes right now.
I understand, but like whether or not Democrats are movable is a separate issue from whether individuals are movable. Like
there you go, fast and bulbous. I think the one guy, one jar guy should have been institutionalized, and maybe necrophiliacs. How about the guy who let a horse fuck him to death? How about that guy? How about the guy who told all his friends, "Hey, I'm gonna go fuck a horse," and they were like, "Hey, John, I don't think that's good. Horses have like 40-inch penises, so if a horse fucks you, you're gonna die." And then John was like, "Well, you know, as long as I don't hurt the horse, you know, whatever, who cares?" And then you know what happened to that guy? A horse penis shot up his anus and it ruptured his intestines and he fucking died. Do you think that guy should have maybe gone to like a mental health facility beforehand in order to be like, "Hey, why do you want to fuck a horse, John? That's kind of crazy. Maybe you shouldn't fuck horses because it'll kill you." Maybe?
I just don't see them as the same. And so regardless of whether or not Democrats are movable or whatever, just like in the existence where like we have the candidates that we have.
Listen, I'm just going to be mean. You guys are a bunch of horse fuckers, okay? Bunch of horse fuckers.
Not saying that we shouldn't try to move them. Not saying that we shouldn't.
I'm not letting the Johns off the hook, conservative liberalism. Never did.
Try to replace them. Hell,
you made up a position to make yourself feel better.
I'm on the front line saying that Schumer should step down as minority leader. I'm on the front line saying that we need a primary Fetterman. We need a primary all these people. So 100% agree with you that.
Police, how many dicks have you sucked? Tell me now. This is a family show. Reel it back in, guys. Reel it back in.
The Democratic Party needs to move, including on Israel. But when you have a level of, I'm just going to say, an example of a commentator who can't take a win and will, for example, criticize Mamdani as in principle being an agent of a Zionist entity that is the Democratic Party or something. Hold
on. Dank Brandon says that's a Facebook rumor. It's not true that somebody was hospitalized for Tylenol. Listen, I saw it on the internet, which means it's true.
It seems like it's probably not true of the broader left coalition. And you remember which side I was on in terms of that debate with Hutch. So you don't need to tell me who's a more proximate ally and who I'm happy to like collaborate with and all that stuff. But there are some individuals who embody a kind of ultimately immovable position.
Gilroy VFX. Okay, maybe I'm being an asshole. You're right. I'm leaning into it a little bit because you guys are being dicks and you're not seeing what I'm saying. You're being obtuse. Your beliefs about Bonnie Blue would change laws and mental health authoritarian enforcement. Bonnie Blue might deserve it, but thousands would get institutionalized. Yeah, no shit. Gilroy VFX, you might not have been here yesterday, but we were talking about what kind of mental health changes in laws would actually have prevented the Irene Zanetsko, that chick who got stabbed on the bus. Irina, what's her name? Irina Zarutska. So Irina Zarutska, we were talking about like what law would have prevented Irina Zarutska from being killed because she was stabbed to death on the fucking bus. She was chilling, minding her own business, looking at her phone, and then some fucking schizophrenic with a knife shanked her fucking carotid. And as a result, this total normie Ukrainian refugee bled out on a fucking city bus. Like absolute fucking horror show. And realistically, all she would have had to do in order to survive is put her back to the wall, which is what cops do, right? Now, that's fucked up. It's beyond fucked up, right? But what would have saved her? And the thing is that this guy, this fucking schizo guy who was incarcerated 14 times, I think he only had like one felony on his thing. The only thing that, in my opinion, would have saved people like Irina Zarutska is the Baker Act criteria says they won't go voluntarily and they pose a significant risk of injury or death to themselves or others. They can be released as soon as they're deemed no longer to be a threat to themselves or others. This person would be loose in society no matter what. Whereas, or in our current society, I would say. Whereas, if you had new mental health criteria where they can't take care of themselves in a way that is conducive to their health and being a productive member of society, can be committed to a public hospital or an asylum for prolonged periods until they are stabilized by drugs and therapy, then you wouldn't have that random schizo on the bus who stabbed somebody in the artery. Or if it did happen, it would happen statistically, substantively less. Okay? That's kind of what we were talking about with, like, in reference to mass shootings, but also in reference to Irina Zarutska. Like, how do you separate crazy people from drugs? And so you're right. Way more people would be institutionalized. But I think with body cameras, with modern security cameras, with abuse reporting software, with abuse reporting, like the way that DCF, the Department of Children and Families, currently operates, where you can do anonymous reports for potential abuse, I think that modern public hospitals would be infinitely better than what we had in the 70s and 80s, based off of technology alone. It would just cost a fuckload of money. Let me take a look. And I think I did that with a $sign. The Baker Act criteria is infinitely a more free society. It's a infinitely more free and more cheap society. My proposal, which you don't have to like, I'm not telling you to like it, would be infinitely more authoritarian and infinitely more expensive. And by the way, we can stay here. Okay, we can stay here. Nobody's saying that we have to pass this law. You're just going to have schizophrenics who stab people on the bus every now and then, and you're going to have mass shootings every now and then. So feel free to stay here. If you're like scared, Connor is going to become dictator of America and he's going to send all the horrors into an asylum. I don't want that. You know, you love horrors too much. That's fine. Don't vote me for president.
Position, and where they cannot be convinced, they're not in the business of being convinced, and they're going to find a way to denigrate our candidates no matter what. And that's what I think we saw in the prime debate. But again, I don't know that
Denigrate
there's
our
much to say
candidates no matter what. What do you mean by that?
So I should say refuse to endorse / vote for our candidates. And I've included that in denigrate and just be like basically counter to the Democratic Party.
All right, let me see if
in terms of their electoral results.
I'm supposed to be hanging out with Dan Pace at 1 p.m. and I think I told Doobie 1 p.m. So I'm gonna check that shit. Doobie, are you available now? Question mark. And then I have 2 Doobies. Does Doobie have an alt? I have Doobie and I have Doobie boobs. Okay. I think the other one's better, so I'll just send him that. All right. Let's get into it for just a few more seconds, and then we're probably going to change content to either Doobie or to a Sitch and Adam breakdown.
Regardless of the outcome or the cost. That's what I mean. There's a subset of creator who is like that. And I'm not even including in that a bunch of the most famous creators. I'm saying people like Prime.
What? You guys have been in liberal circles for too long. So if someone is going to get raped, you punish the victim? No, dumbass, but you make sure that they don't expose themselves to like situations where it's easy for them to get raped. What?
And I
Well,
like Prime, and you like Prime. Like I can like people who I think are politically out to sea. Hell, I like Connor, and Connor is like, at least he calls himself a Republican.
it just
so
scares me. Maybe
I
again,
don't-
you're saying that like when I said you said that the people in the focus group hypothetical that I gave you, you'd speak to them and make different arguments than you would to Prime. But it really scares me because a lot of the Democratic base is disillusioned
Yeah, see, you're different. Vetsu Neal says, I wouldn't send Nick Avocado to asylum either. I would.
with the party, and they're actually closer, even if it's irrational, even if I disagree with it, to Prime's position than they are to yours. And if all libs have is you need to vote harder, you need to lick Kamala's clip more, you're not enthusiastic enough, this is your fault, just like more of that, I don't see Democrats winning.
Look, I'm not
I just don't. They're the weakest arguments. They're not persuasive. They suck ass.
Of the party. Wait, Aaron, I'm not the messenger of the party. You know, proof is in the pudding. People like Mamdani are gathering crowds. People like Bernie and AOC. People like Gavin Newsom, right? They're messaging, and so I'm
I don't know who Free Solo guy is.
Not an expert on what is the right messaging for the Democratic Party. I'm just a debater, right? I feel like
What, you're
Avon
discharging
Buck, I'm just a
yourself of
gangster.
responsibility? I was never insinuating that you have any connection to like the fucking DNC or any of this.
No,
I'm just
I'm
talking
saying-
about what's in your control.
I am not.
And what's
I'm
in
not
your control
representative.
is to just recapitulate the same strategy the Dems have been using, which is Trump bad though, Trump really bad though, Democrats slightly less bad on Israel than Trump, and acknowledge that. You have to vote. It's not working. It's the same strategy that I've seen that just failed, and it's being brought out again and again and again.
Yeah. Paul says, Connor, the level to which you are upset indicates you need to be institutionalized. You are obese with 1,000 dicks and razor blades. I mean, honestly, guys, honestly, I might need some, I might have an anger problem. God, you guys are so gross. 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 Gross.
I'm just myself, right? Like I'm not trying to say that I'm representative of what the Democrats' approach are. I have no affiliation with the Democratic Party other than I'm a registered
you don't.
Democrat.
You use the same strategy though.
What do you mean? That the other side is bad? We're
Yeah,
not supposed to use the strategy of the other side is bad. I mean,
No, that's
what
not
you're
the
preaching is
only.
Correct. All right. Anyways, I think I'm good with this. The point is that Aaron, my chat is filled with Coomer degenerates who don't like being criticized. That's totally fine. The other point of this is that Aaron and or Straighterade are trying to play with hypotheticals that I think are stupid, and I think she's sweeping for far lefties being electorally irresponsible. I think that Pisco is correctly calling out the bullshit. I wish Pisco was going a little bit harder, but that's okay. I went sufficiently hard at you and sufficiently hard on my chat. Should MAGA be institutionalized? 100%. Yep. Yep.